All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to track 4, our track to design the reputation-based weighted voting. We are back in the 4th session with Octopus and myself and you guys. Thanks for all the amazing stuff we have seen over the past week in the Discord channel. I just make my usual announcements at the beginning of the session for those who are watching us on Twitter or on YouTube. So this is part of the study season program at TE Academy, our online learning program that is available to anyone interested. And as part of this program, we are curating the EFCC Token Engineering Track Day. So it's at EFCC Brussels. The final meeting of all community members, token engineering researchers and practitioners in the space. Let's all meet in Brussels on July 10th. And we'd like to give as many students as possible the chance to join us. That's why we are running an EFCC ticket giveaway. You can win a free ticket for EFCC worth 500 euros. By spreading the word about token engineering and our token engineering newsletter. Here's a QR code that you can use. Spread the word, share this with 3 of your friends, and make them subscribe to Token Engineering Reads, and you can win a free ticket. I guess Fabi will drop a note in the chat as well. And with that, let's dig in for today in our collaboration session. Today we'll discuss voting design verification. So how can we further approach making sure that we design the best mechanism possible for the decision who should be the fellowship prize winner? And we all know there is no optimal, perfect voting mechanism, but we can see to make it as good as possible for our purpose. And this session's big topic is how can we verify the design. We'll collect verification questions together in a brainstorming, and then we'll send you to breakout rooms. We'll discuss in breakout rooms how to approach the verification, and then take next steps over the coming weeks. All right. Some words on voting design verification. So you might have noticed that in the first session, we were collecting requirements. And we start basically with a lot of restrictions, limitations, things that we have to achieve, things that we want to avoid. And then we've opened up and go wild, right? And it's good to be then broad and come up with creative ideas on how a voting design can look like. And we've seen some great proposals in the presentations in the last session. And then we have to narrow down again, and this is what we do today and this week. We try to verify if these designs, these first initial designs, can cater our needs, and we verify against the requirements, and we verify being guided by the questions we collect today. And then after running verifications in various ways, we'll put together a list of potential approaches to verify today. We might have to update our design and again, tweak it. And this is, again, opening up and being flexible and go beyond what we originally planned to come up with a better idea with an improvement to the design to address the weaknesses that are still not solved, to then finally get to an implementation-ready voting design. So it's a continuous change between opening up, being broad, going wild, narrowing down, verify against, opening up again, be flexible and open-minded, and then narrow down again. So you have to switch modes in the course of this process, like in many other engineering cases as well. And I just wanted to let you know, so today it's about narrowing down again, but we might have to go broader in upcoming weeks. Actually, let's take a look at the timelines again. Yeah, first of all, I checked with Vitor on the implementation, also our timelines to distribute the NFTs that make people or that help people acquire additional voting weight. And looking at this, we have extended our timelines. So the deadline for us to finally decide on the voting algorithm for the fellowship winner is June 5th. And I also updated the requirements sheet. June 5th is the deadline to collectively decide on the voting algorithm. Then we have almost, I think, 10 days, around 10 days to implement it. Gives us some buffer to solve some implementation challenges. And then the voting will be open from June 18th to 25th. This is important to know. 1 week to vote. It will open on June 18th and will close the voting on June 25th. And in case we have to take some subsequent step in calculating the final result, this gives us an additional buffer in time to then finally announce the fellowship prize winner on July 9th. Now, we had this questions when we discussed the original requirements. Who is going to decide on what algorithm we should take and what voting design we should take for the fellowship prize? And it should be you, actually. So our goal is to make the participants in this track decide on what is the best voting algorithm to take this decision and to let people vote, to let the whole community vote. And we thought, okay, then we probably need 2 steps. So first of all, I'd like to invite you now as a participant, signaling, okay, I'm active participant here. I have already collected some points. Remember, every contribution per week gives you some points in creating, working on GitHub, submitting Excels or summaries of the sessions. This gives you points. And if you've collected any points, you should be eligible to take part in the decision of what voting design should we apply for the voting winner. And now let's go to Discord. I'll show you how to register so that we have a picture of who should be involved in the voting. So this is our Discord channel. It's the main channel, track 4. And here's this message on please register as a decision maker for the voting design. Just click the dolphin icon. And in case you have a teammate who was not able or is not able to join at the moment, let them know. Please spread the word and register to be eligible to vote. And then on June 5th, we'll take a joint decision, probably plurality vote on what should be the final voting design. Okay, thanks for registering. And yeah, please spread the word. I stop sharing now and hand over to you, Andrew, or should I continue sharing the slides?
It's fine if you continue sharing. We're going off the same slides. So
okay.
We wanted to talk today about what would be helpful to us as decision makers, since we will be making the decision of which mechanism to select. And this is something that's very common in the token engineering world. And in the engineering world in general, there's something called requests for proposals, where organizations will ask for different designs, and then they will consider those designs through different methods. And everyone's going to have different background and different expertise on this, and that's really good. So the fact that we have some beginners or some people, who haven't written designs yet is really good. One of the things we want to emphasize today is to make sure that the types of knowledge that we're seeking are concrete and approachable. So if you go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
To that end, we're going to ask you to spend about 5 minutes just collecting ideas of things that you might want to know that would help you in understanding the mechanisms, or in ultimately making the decisions about which mechanism you would support. And these can be extremely simple questions. I am going to tell my teaching story now. So one time we were doing teacher evaluations, and the students asked, well, what are some things we can write on evaluations? And I said, you could say, I don't know, his handwriting was difficult to read, but he had great enthusiasm and expertise. That's an example. It's 7 students who literally wrote, his handwriting was hard to read, but he had great enthusiasm and expertise. So on this next slide, we're giving you examples of types of questions that might be helpful to ask. But you do not have to ask these specific questions. These are your questions that you are legitimately curious about in the decision-making process. So here are some examples of questions that we could ask. If all voters vote for candidate A, is it the case that candidate A wins? That's extremely simple, but that would be a disaster if it weren't the case. Or are there any situations where if 10 randomly chosen voters flip from A to B, that suddenly candidate B is now the winner? In other words, are there 10 voters who can flip the result just by themselves? And that's related to an idea called the Nakamoto coefficient, which is the smallest number of voters who can decide the result. And so those are examples of questions. Your questions don't have to sound academic or even intelligent. We just want whatever your genuine curiosity is. So we'd like to take 5 minutes and just take some time to generate those questions, and then we will collect them before moving forward.
Right, and we just switch off our mics and be silent and let you focus on the questions you might want to ask. Just take them down on a piece of paper or your personal laptop, and we'll start sharing it in 5 minutes. Okay, I'd say let's share your questions. We are keen to collect all potential questions for verification now. I wonder, let me check the chat. Saremba, you dropped a note in the chat. Is this related to verification? If yes, just share with us.
So this is related to verification and not only. So this is a bit bigger than just the questions. But I also have the questions, which I'm happy to share first.
Shoot it away.
Okay. So maybe I will put them in the chat.
You can.
So that people can see them.
I'll also. Can you see the slide?
Message is too long.
The message is too long. So you can drop them in the chat, and I'll also put them on our slide deck so that we have them captured for reference.
Okay. So I'll put help. Hopefully that's not too long.
Okay. So it's 3 questions, or is it all in one?
These are 3 questions.
Okay. Let me copy paste. And feel free to say some words about them.
I will just, okay. And then the next one is sort of a bit longer. So actually quite a few of those points are related to the points, the research that I was mentioning in the beginning. But so I'll maybe say a few more words about that. So the question number 1, do voters believe that their decision might be seen and judged by anyone from their social circle? So this and some of the other points might be somewhat similar. People might make different decisions if they believe that the decisions that they make decisions not as individuals but as group of social circles. So they might either feel that maybe they will be judged and maybe they're who they're seen as a member of the community, or who they're seen as a sort of specialist in the professional circle might be the lens how other people might look at their decision. They might decide to shape that decision with this in mind. And the connected point number 2, do voters believe that they have social responsibility that might be at odds with their assessment of the best choice? So this is connected but slightly different part of what I just said before. The next part is number 3, how many voters might have the decision rule to follow the person or persons they see as specialists, and could there be any demographic characteristics at play? So this is there are 2 points to that. One is, are there some sort of demographic characteristics that we can think about? And this is when we're thinking about either like people with different NFTs. I suppose this could be one way of thinking about the demographic characteristics. The other could be what those NFTs could reflect. So, for example, if we have people who maybe have been studying the fundamentals and they are following one of the life tracks, they might feel that they do not have enough knowledge to judge, but they just follow the last teacher or sort of teacher person that they had. So is this something that is very common among all of the students, or is it something that is just for the beginners? So that is like understanding what this looks like might help to understand what decision rules voters might take. The last point. The editing, the formatting got a bit weird here.
Yeah, sorry, this was just copy and paste. So this is the large one, right?
I mean, also how I pasted it, the numbering was very much changed because there were it was point number 4 with A, B, C, D, and so on. So this is maybe from other side, and this is what we would like the votes to reflect. And would we like them to reflect or to sort of aim at good, I think a different word should be used here, good, sorry, I don't have the appropriate word, but the good of the whole token engineering community. Or maybe token engineering academic community, so that's slightly smaller. I guess a lot of people might feel, and rightly so, a lot of connection with the community where they were learning. But a slightly different thing is the goodness of how the token engineering community, or how the token engineering academy community develops. So that's slightly different angle. And what about the reflection of the opinion of candidates? That might be different. What if their sort of work or their status as the specialist might be at odds, or might be a bit different than what is sort of reflected in the community. And another example here is, what if we have a bad teacher but a person who is great in researching token engineering, or the other way around? What if we have a like good teacher but not really doing any novel research? And I suppose a third thing would be, what if there is a candidate who actually does great thing in sort of like communicating and popularizing token engineering in the wider Web3 community, which could be something very different than actually providing research or providing teaching. And I rest my case.
Okay, so this was a lot, and obviously you thought about it. Thanks so much for sharing. For now, let's not go into the discussion, because this will be the second phase. I just try to capture everything in the notes, and let's collect first and continue with the next comment. Thanks for sharing now, Sarambra. And I think Joanne was the next one. I'll just copy and paste your question, and feel free to switch on your mic and say some words about your question.
I think Aaron was there just before me.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to.
Just
oh yeah, sorry.
Sure one is skipped.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for the note. Aaron, just copying your question here. How to value assigned to the NFTs?
What I mean by it is that, when I try to simulate different voting models in the spreadsheet I've shared, one of the things that I came across, and it just bugged my mind, is that if you, like I did, if you use, random number generation functions all throughout, you'll find that, what determines, what makes the biggest difference is the value you assigned. It's not the value assigned, it's basically the spectrum, is how far the top and the bottom lines are in terms of asset valuation. That makes the difference between the different voting mechanisms. Like if you go to IRV, then if you make this spread from 1 to 30, and then it is not random, that it is actually pre-calculated properly, then you'll find out that the different voting mechanisms, they provide very different results for the runner-ups and the first. So that's what one of my fact checks, that if you have a spectrum from 1 to 2, then none of these things matter, to be honest with you.
Perfect. If you say value, you mean the weight in our CSV.
Exactly.
So I say it's a /weight. Okay, good question. Thanks so much for sharing. Again, let's collect these questions now first before we further discuss it. Joanne, now you had a first question. How much power does the theoretical most powerful voter have? Let's copy it here and please say some words to explain.
Yes, I'm thinking if the design in question has some way to, if let's say a voter has just has just signed up for the study season, that might be the least powerful voter in most designs. I'm thinking the least powerful voter that has voting rights somehow. And then there might be someone who is the theoretically most powerful voter, like it would be a fellowship committee member who has all the fundamentals NFTs and participated in all the live tracks and had all the NFTs somehow. So what would be kind of the
range,
the difference between their power?
Yeah.
How many more times power does the most powerful voter have compared to the least powerful voter have?
Yeah. Great question. Thanks. Noted. Let me check. Who's next? Sarama's question is already on the board. Then you had a second one, Joanne, depending on the number of votes. Let me just copy it here. Maybe explain a little bit what you mean here. Depending on the number of votes, will certain groups of voters effectively have no influence?
So let's say the experts for some definition are very powerful and the basic students are not very powerful. If there are not that many basic students, and let's say the students all want candidate 4 and the experts all want candidate 1, will some voters, will the students or will the experts under some circumstances not have any real say?
Right. Okay. Perfect. Victor, you've added a comment. You had a similar question. I just drop it here as well. What's the ratio? You'd like to elaborate on it?
I think it's the same. It's just expressed in a different way. I just wanted to wait until Joan explains her view. So I think it's exactly the same.
Okay, good. Let's take the next question. Felix, just copy it here. Feel free to switch on your mic.
Okay, yes. Hi, Angela. So, what I meant with this question is to find out, as it says, what are the number of voters with the either highest or lowest possible weights that is needed to flip the result. And I think that's very related to the question from Madhuri, from Victor later. That's about cutoff and capping. And I think if we figure out this number, we can maybe also set a cap on the weights and or even lower the number with the cap. Yeah.
All right. Good. Madhuri shared another one. How to enable voting. Madhuri, I'm copying this here. Hello. And you, please explain.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Sorry, it's a little bit loud where I'm at.
It's okay.
Yeah. My question was related to so being able to have a mechanism that enables voting based less on the person's just individual reputation, maybe in token engineering in general, and focuses more on the actual submission of the content, especially because obviously it's a newer discipline and there's probably lots of contributions that people can make even if they haven't got a long history in the space, for example. But I think it does definitely biases that people have towards people who have more reputation or more well known. So it's a way that we can counteract that or balance that out.
I think the final part didn't come across well because of some noises, but I think we are getting your point. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, I'll write in the chat as well.
All right, next one. Victor, what is an unacceptable weight concentration?
Yeah, I think Felix, and it's again leaning a little bit on, I didn't see Joanne's previous comment, but it's leaning on that. So it's just if there's some sort of, we should think about or have an opinion about an capping on the maximum weight concentration. So on the maximum weight, basically, that's the maximum, I think Joanne said, power or the strength that somebody can have, because because for that reason, like if you increase the delta between the weakest, the quote, and the strongest, quote, then you have what Joanne just explained. And I just wanted to kind of add the only additional factor that I thought, that I'm not sure if we already discussed the quorum, like the minimum amount of people that should vote so that the vote is accepted as regular. And that is related also to that, because obviously, if you have only very, very few, we agree to this, then you need only very few with a higher weight to have a very significant weight on one candidate potentially. So thank you.
Yeah, makes total sense. Thanks for sharing. And since I'd like to take all the questions that you've raised in the chat, thanks so much for sharing. Adit, you are next. Do we need to define different parameters of voting?
Yeah, hey, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question was, I mean, should we define multiple parameters for like voting, since we are measuring different kind of stuff? Like one could be the people who are taking class, their like knowledge, how much they shared and all the things, and the other could be their contribution and relevance of this. And since different people will be voting, is one will be the students, the other would be experts who I'm making an assumption here, but who might or might not have time to go through the classes, but they will be key opinion leaders who are in the community. So they both will be voting from the different perspective. One will be voting based on how the class is taken, how easy it was or for a student, and the other would be based on the relevance of the project. So should we make different variables to measure all the key parameters, or since if we are doing in one variable, everything will be like combined together and there might be mix and match. So how should we go about that?
Yeah, great question. This was the final one, right? So any other questions you would like to verify? Okay. I stop here then, and let me check. I just have to check our next steps, because we'll now discuss verification approaches. Let me see. Yeah. Andrew, would you like to add some comments here before we go to the breakout spaces?
Yes. I'll pull up the slides because all of the questions we've asked so far are really great questions. They're questions about the mechanism of the process in general. And what I hope we can produce today is a set of very specific questions, because if you got a chance to watch the video about Bloom's taxonomy, that's great. If you didn't, I would really encourage you to go watch it, I think that the impact of there's an idea that sometimes that there are people who are good researchers and people who are good teachers, and they don't overlap a lot. And there's even an idea maybe that sometimes good researchers don't want to teach. That may be true in some disciplines. That has not matched my experience at all in math and computer science. The great researchers are usually great explainers and great communicators. And that communication process of being very clear is very important for their thinking in research. So in terms of the types of process that we're going to go undergo today, I'd like for you to choose, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and these breakout rooms will be assigned randomly. And that is intentional because we want to mix and match the energy a little bit. And if you've been used to working with one person, it's really good for you to discuss something with someone who has not yet discussed it. For instance, myself, I am still working through the actual mechanics of the various mechanisms. So when I was designing attacks on quadratic funding and investigating quadratic funding, one of the first things I did was go through the case of 3 voters and 2 grants by hand with several different numbers to make sure I really understood it. So the challenge I'm going to give you here is to pick a very specific question. And the questions we heard earlier were really good high-level questions. But what we're wanting here is something so that we actually understand the mechanisms. And it's okay if it's extremely specific. It could be like, if there are 5 voters and one of them is an expert and 4 of them are students, how do the weights have to be engineered for the student voice to outweigh the expert voice? They can be extremely specific. Our goal here is to really get our hands dirty with understanding the mechanism. And one reason for that is we have this collection of simulation tools that different people have implemented. But when we go to ask specific questions and actually run those simulations ourselves to get the information we need, we will be running a strong chance of breaking them. I actually just broke my software right before this session, and I'm having to rework it because I was trying to do something specific that didn't work the way I thought it would. So after you have chosen one specific question that you feel would be valuable to you as the decision maker, and this is like advancing one step in the understanding process of like, okay, do I really understand this mechanism? Do I really understand what would happen in this one specific case? Then you can decide on the process of how you will answer that question. So with the tools that we have, a lot of the high level questions are not answerable. What we have are things, like I'm trying to think of an unanswerable question. Is democracy better than dictatorship? Not answerable. It's a values question. But we can use computation to define when specific instances will give good results under democracy and not even good. We can talk very concretely. So our goal here is to translate from the types of questions we have about general mechanisms to extremely specific questions. And it's okay if you only answer one specific question, because we have the next week when we can generalize, and you can go from the specific scenario that you investigated and then run it under other scenarios, because you'll have a toolkit and you'll have the basic foundation in place. And there are lots of processes that we can use for sense making. We can do simulations. I'm working on a simulation process. We can do data analysis of what already exists. We can do spreadsheets, which would also be types of simulations and data analysis. I was really energized to see people working on mathematical proofs, because that to me is close to my heart. But the goal is to maximize practical community understanding. And the question of like, what is most important to it? We cannot, regardless of what we tell the voters, they vote based on what they want to vote on. And all we can do in the computational side is look at the signals that we're given and the outcome it produces, which is plenty, because translating between those two of our high-level ideas and our signal is often the most valuable thing. Hamming the great engineer and mathematician Richard Hamming said, the purpose of computation is not numbers, but insight. And a lot of times what we get out of this process is not that, oh, this is the right answer, but it's that through engaging in the conversation, we have improved our mental models to the point that we actually can understand and feel comfortable with the decisions. And it no longer feels abstracted to us. I just kind of preached a sermon. That was not my intention. But it's what I'm saying makes sense in terms of the types of questions that I would encourage us to focus on for this week. And our goal, you do not need to answer the question today. You just need to come up with the question that would be helpful to you to answer it in terms of deciding between the different mechanisms and the process of how you will get that information that is helpful to you. You might also think about both for yourself and thinking in terms of you are an engineer and you're presenting to a client. How would you present the results? Would you want a table comparing the different mechanisms in different scenarios? Would you want like scatter plots or bar graphs, or what would it look like that you're trying to produce? A lot of times I find it's most helpful to begin by outlining, like creating a sketch of what you want the final graphic to be. And then it's just a question of getting the data to fill in that graphic. If people want to talk about mathematical proofs, that would be awesome. But of course, I'm not going to force that on anyone. Also, it's completely valid to use a large language model for this process. So if you're not experienced as a Python coder, it's totally, if you can communicate to the LLM what you want, lots of times it will give you code, and then you can run that in your Jupyter notebook and see, does that look how I want it to look? And you've gotten one piece in place now. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to choose, I would like for you to choose one specific question. And specific is like, under what circumstances do this mechanism and this mechanism not give the same result? Angela and I will be here to offer support and ideas and framing and making sure that you are doing very specific things that we can explore with the computational tools we have. Our goal for today is just to plan our work for the upcoming week. We're not trying to finish in the space we have left. You are definitely encouraged to work with people that are from the same breakout room. And again, we're trying to get people to meet new people and explore new perspectives that they might not have. And when you have a clear question and plan, we're going to come back and discuss it as a group. And we're also going to have a Discord thread where you can record that as well. So in just a moment, we'll spin out the breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions about anything I've said so far?
Will we have access to the to those questions, to the slides with the questions? Or
I'll drop a note.
Mm-hmm.
I'll drop a note to the chat so that you can open the slide deck yourself and go over the questions.
Thank you. And also, I have a sort of memory and processing power of a squirrel now. So I sometimes struggle with actually remembering the whole thing if there is a very long spoken piece. Would you mind if I just sort of repeated what is the task, and you say that I understood it correctly and I didn't sort of forget or get lost? My understanding of the task is that we should choose one specific question, and that this specific question should be from the ones that we brainstormed today. Is this point correct?
It does not have to be from the list that we brainstormed so far. I think that most of the ones we brainstormed would probably need refinement to be considered specific enough for the level of what we are looking for.
Oh, so potentially a sort of sub-question of sub-problem of the things that were brainstormed today. Okay, so choose this one specific issue and in the breakout room brainstorm on the way how to resolve that. Did I get that correct?
Yes. So we want to translate from the very general questions that we were asking to more specific things, and then translate those specific questions to specific computations that can be done to give the answer. That's the idea. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to add a note. Some of the questions you've brought up are valuable, but not be solvable via computation. So let's put them aside and decide at the end of the session how to address them otherwise.
That makes sense.
Good. Okay, so I've opened 6 breakout rooms, and the algorithm will decide who you will meet in the breakout room. Then you have 10 to 15 minutes to discuss which question to pick, how to verify an approach. Again, you don't have to have the solution. And then we'll meet again to share the verification approaches. Ready to go, everyone? I'll open the breakout rooms. See you there. Okay. We'll pause the streaming for a moment and we'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes to discuss the results collected in the breakout rooms in the main room again. Zach, hello. You can just join any breakout room. Perfect. Okay. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I was joining 1 or 2 breakout rooms, and the conversations there were great, I must say. It's always awful to stop and interrupt these conversations. I hope you at least got some great inspiration and first approaches of how you could tackle some of the questions, and that's what we'd like to discuss for the rest of this session. We would love to hear from you how what questions you picked and how you'd approach verification. So let me just get back to my slides and check with Octopus. Are there any comments before we start sharing based on your observations? Octopus is missing. Hello.
hello.
You're here. Oh, good. Should we start sharing?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me I took notes who shared rooms. So let's start with room number 1. This was Jonas, Mate, and I think at some point also Zach. So just would one of you want to share what's your question and how you'll approach verification? Maybe Mate?
Yeah, I can.
Or Jonas?
Mate,
Yeah.
do you want to go?
Whoever.
Okay, I'll just. So we talked mainly about the point of when there's little quorum and people didn't attend all the sessions, the different tracks of the candidates, how to do that fair and how we can see in the different voting algorithms whether that's whether they are fair in that aspect. Or actually, I have to say we only got in the last minute to the point of how to see that in the voting algorithm. So thought a little bit about some mechanisms, how it could be fair. And so we'll probably look at those ones in that aspect. We thought it definitely needs to flow into the voting algorithm, whether you attended or whether you have actually any knowledge about those tracks, those candidates, and then distribute a little bit your weight according to that. But we haven't found a concrete point like how to distribute it or so.
We had different ideas. One of them was to give exponentially more weight to someone who has an NFT or who attended someone's class. So if you attended one class, then you would have, I don't know, 1 weight, and if you attended 2, then you would have 3 or 4 weights, and if you attended 3, then you would have a lot more. That was one solution, and the other one was that to if you have, let's say, 20 or we thought about the question if we should have if the participants would score each candidate. So say that you give some points to all 4 candidates, and you have, say, 20 points, and if you attended all 4, then you could distribute as you want. But if you attended only 2, then you would only have 10 points to distribute as you want, and the other 10 points would go to the other candidates that you haven't attended the class. So like 5-5, and then the other one you can do however you like. And then we thought about the problem of teachers not attending these sessions, and how they would, because they would probably have more weight, but then how do we distribute that? Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wonder, I mean, some of the questions we have already discussed, and there are some more technical feedbacks on how we can track things. So I wonder if for some of the questions related to what you've just mentioned, I would offer an office hour. I could make it on Friday to, for example, let you know how we plan to mint the NFTs for the study seasons, which would allow us to track who has accomplished a certain learning goal in the study seasons. And any other questions that are related to more procedural questions, right? Because, Andrew, would you have further questions on verification of this aspect? Because how to make it fair pops up again and again, and fairness and computation is sometimes hard to verify.
I have an idea for an experiment that might be
Okay.
run to compare the different mechanisms along this aspect. So currently, I believe there is what you could do is you could run the experiment with all of the NFT information available, and then you could delete specific NFTs that corresponded to what you're concerned with, and see, does that change the results? So if we delete study season speaker information, and we delete like course author information, do we get the same results? And then we can see how much is that mattering in the final result, and then we can decide how we feel about how much it matters. So translating it to an experiment that you can do with the computational tools. And one thing that we probably, I mean, I'll take ownership of this, but probably to refactor the GitHub so that the available resources and information is more clearly laid out, so people are aware of what they can already use for these types of experiments. And I can make a video. We're doing office hours on how to do the process of experiments to answer these specific questions. And it's
Sounds
also
good.
It's also okay if there's not a final decision right now. There's the thread in Discord where we can continue this process.
Okay. Thanks for sharing, Mate and Jonas. I also tried to capture the questions on the Google Slides, just for your information. Okay, let's check who should go next. Ideally, all groups can present their approaches. Let me check. Room number 2, Joanne and Maturi. Hello, hello, Joanne or Maturi. If you like, please share what you discussed in your breakout room.
We discussed a bit. We didn't really reach the point of having a concrete question. I think what I would really like is to know what are the different designs that I can play with. And then I would like to see how can I configure each design to make a voter very, very powerful or very little powerful. And I would like to play around with that, like practically with some code, ideally, or some mechanism that is working. But I would need to know what are the mechanisms that are available for that play. And at this point, I don't really know that.
Yeah. So here's my proposal. Octopus and I also discussed this question. At this point, going back to in which phase are we? I would suggest that we don't open up for entirely new mechanisms. So use the mechanisms that are already on the table. So those that we have discussed so far. You proposed one. I think Jonas suggested one. Victor suggested one. And who was the fourth team? Please, guys, help me.
Felix and Chuan, I think.
Felix, right.
Me and Jade, yes.
You and Jade, right. Felix and Jade had the fourth algorithm, I think, or design. I think you guys all shared the proposal. Let's open a thread to put them together if needed again, and take this as the fundament for verification, as a starting point, these four.
Can I just ask if please, when things like that are like discussed and put together, could there then be linked to, for example, the information in GitHub? This is I quite sometimes struggle to follow discussions if there's lots of people and lots of threads. So that would make it so much easier to not lose the most important things, especially if they reached some sort of consensus or.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's open a thread where we just put together all material available. Maybe Octopus, can you support us in opening a thread and saying just voting designs, and then please everyone put the links there, either GitHub or slides that you presented, a diagram, so that we can find it. And happy to additionally structure it and make it available in the information hub, Saramba. Valid point. And Joanne, does this also help you for further steps in the verification?
Yeah, I think it would be awesome if when everyone posts a link to their design, if they also kind of specify how can people play around with this. Just to make sure that it's not just a link to a bit of theory, but to something tangible in some way.
You mean in case there's already a model available or a spreadsheet calculator or so?
Octopus just wrote it in the chat, how to use. That's kind of what that's 100% what I'm aiming at.
So some instructions how to use and
how do I use your design?
Okay.
Yeah.
Felix, you want to add something here?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to mention it again, maybe for the case that not everybody has recognized this in the chat. So I wrote a little tool where I implemented all of the mechanisms, and they are not fully, but part of composable, and there are descriptions how to use the package in the files. Everything is described. I will drop the link again in the chat, just in case. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing again. Yeah, that's important. I would have missed it, I must say. Thanks. Okay.
Can I jump in and say one thing quickly? I know I've talked a lot, but I've done 20 token engineering projects at this point, so I'm going to use my expertise just a little bit. This is incredibly common that the client and the engineer don't have all the information they need. And it's not a bug if we repeat ourselves or if we are giving more explicit information. It's just what happens in this process.
Okay. Should we continue with the next room? Aaron and Saramba.
Saramba, do you want to take the lead or should I just get it?
Feel free to take a lead and I will jump in.
Sure. Because it wasn't really, discussing a question to start with. That's right. So sort of the direction that I've actually just pulled. I was responsible to design this spreadsheet to incorporate multiple different voting mechanisms and see if we can just fall back on to check how things are going to work out. And Shizayamba actually made a very important point that without having the relations between the NFTs, it's a half-made simulation. It just wouldn't work the way it's supposed to work. It's a good call. So I've just clustered it, in fact, and put different weights to different let's say NFTs. Well, I'll added a multiplying factor to it to cluster it to see how that's going to change, and then I'll further work on that to see how that's going to progress. And what we were wondering and just discussed was the spectrum, the spread between the lowest weight and the highest weight, the top and the bottom bars. If you have, for example, for one person who attended ETHCC Paris, who just attended it like I did last year, just sat down and just listened to everybody. It's hard to grasp everything. You don't really, it's extremely interesting, but you don't get it all. And the value of that is incomparable with someone who completed the Fundamentals 5 course, right? So obviously that's a variance. But just if you give the premier one a value of 1 and the latter a 10, and the spectrum is only from 1 to 10, and that makes almost zero difference between the voting mechanisms. So it's just that spectrum needs to be from 1 to 100, and you need to have a proper weight. So that's the thing that that bugged me. And even now, when I've increased the spectrum, if you have enough waters, it still doesn't make much of a difference. So that actually gives you an indication whether on which voting mechanisms will work as fast as we want, and how it should go. So quadratic simulations, they actually give the largest difference between the least and the best. It's the easiest. And if you go to IRV, which is the core mechanism of runoff voting systems, then you don't need the difference is negligible between if it's reputation weight or not. So I've got a lot to think about still. So just going to drop it down there. I've confused myself, and it's the right point.
So if I can add to that, so one point that Erin has made is that one of the main explanation of the variability in results are the weights of the asset classes, and my questions were, as Erin was mentioning about clustering, or about the distribution that I used for generating or for sampling the random results. And what I was thinking is that the clustering is something that can actually make a very big difference here. So both clustering that having some NFTs means that a person is so much more likely to have some other specific NFTs. So you can say clustering, or you can say that there's no independence between the having various NFTs, but also for the asset classes, we might also consider some specific distributions for that. And where I'm going to with my thinking is that quite some of the potential edge cases can or should be tried to be attempted to be described as tail events. So when I say tail event, I mean a situation where we have a like event that is very unlikely in terms of it falls, for example, in 5% of the least likely occurrences in a distribution. But the tail event is something that, talking about that, makes more sense, especially if we talk about multivariate distributions. So the distribution for the NFTs and the distribution of the weight between different classes, I think those things should not be independent as well. So we could have the the clustering or co-occurrences, which how we shape the distributions, or how some unlikely situation might happen. Those could be described as those tail events, and those could be the best way to model some of the edge cases. And I thought that if we want to be able to actually simulate the algorithms and test them for edge cases, then the specific multivariate distributions and dependencies would be one of the big mechanisms here.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Let's continue with the next group. This is, oops, just Adit and Felix.
Yes. Okay, Adit, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So we both had questions in the here. So we had initially considered to choose a Felix question, where the question was, what's the smallest number of voters that needed who have one lower weightage and higher weightage to flip the voting mechanism. So that's one thing we decided to design. And Philip, could you go into detail? He had the model already built, but could you go on how to simulate that?
Yes. So additionally, we thought a little bit about the computation. And as I mentioned before, I already implemented the tool. And so we went a little bit into the code and looked how can we extend the model to different categories for the candidates that could be voted on. And then in the end, to combine this with my question and also the question Victor asked, how do we need to cap, and what are the smallest number of voters for highest and lowest weights that could flip the result, also in respect to these new categories for the candidates that exist. And I think that's also like a very valuable question by Adit. And I wondered myself why I didn't thought about this before. So it's also kind of a proposal to extend the mechanisms about this functionality. I mean, the mechanisms doesn't always have to be used with this, but it could be like a good option for some use cases. Yes.
Sounds good. Any comments, questions, anyone? Okay. Then I missed to give you the mic, Victor.
Yeah. Well, my group was basically me. So, and then also I got somehow just a little bit hung up on the idea of the delta as well between the experts and the non-experts. So Angela was so nice to jump into my room, and we had a little discussion about this. And so I think trying to kind of synthesize from everything that has already been said, or maybe I'll just say in a couple of sentences, I thought that probably the simplest way to create some sort of base case scenario, just very simple, just to say, okay, let's have a look. So if everybody who's a non-expert gets a weight of 1, just to kind of like draw a line in the sand, and then kind of try to create like some feeling for play around with what could a delta be if the total amount of voters is number X, and from that we agree on a certain quorum that needs to be X times Y, or whatever the quorum and percentage should be that we accept the vote. And then we have like a scenario where we said, okay, this is the basis. And so now everybody who is an expert and has more NFTs, how much difference or how much delta can they maximum have? And then we have our design space, basically a code like this, and then you can say, okay, how would it make sense to somehow divide there and give different weights to the NFTs? And I'm just going to leave it there, because I think everybody already said a lot about the mechanisms, and it's quite straightforward how you would somehow think of this through. I just have the feeling, honestly, that I think maybe the simpler approach and less complicated, maybe we just see very quickly that we actually don't have so much design space, because I just pulled up the Excel sheet that I did, that also I think somebody published in the Discord. I mean, there are like I think 348 different the fundamentalists, like the people that have the fundamental courses, like I call them number of TE Academy members, and they have like 1,052 different I don't know, awards or NFTs. And then you only have the special contributors, I called them like this, you called them expert, 82. So that's already kind of like quite a significant jump, and among them, I think they only have like 112, and that's just the numbers that I dragged down from what I found in the links that Angela posted and shared with us in the Discord. So I'm just I think my feeling is that we might actually find a relatively simple solution to this very quickly. But good to see everybody playing around, and then join you in the game online. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. And the last room is Andrew, Octopus, and Yonks.
Yonks, would you like to summarize, or do you want me to? It makes no difference to me.
Go ahead. I got some background noise on my end, so all you, my friend.
Cool. So we looked at two questions. The one is about quorum. How much does turnout matter? And there was an idea that maybe there were things outside of the mechanism exploration that the community could do to incentivize turnout with like POAPs or rewards. But on the simulation side, what we looked at doing is we could run simulations with different percentages of turnout and see if there's a big difference. Like, does it really matter if there are 50 voters versus 200 voters in terms of the results that we're likely to get? The other question is, what are the it's related to an idea that's popped up a few times about relative weight. And so we thought about restricting to just 2 candidates initially and saying, okay, what if everyone votes for candidate A? And then what if we keep increasing the number of voters for candidate B for each potential mechanism, so that like the person with the most NFTs votes for candidate B? Does that flip any of the mechanisms? And then the top 2, and then the top 3, and keep going until we find the number at which candidate B becomes the winner, to see how sensitive each mechanism is to defections among the upper tier. And then we could do the same thing starting at the bottom and see how sensitive it is to defections in the lower tier. So those were some questions, and then some specific experiments that
Awesome. I think we've covered all groups, all breakout spaces, or did we miss anyone? Please let us know. Okay, looks good. Octopus, would you take over the final steps? I think, yeah, again, I'll check with Octopus to maybe run an office hour this week again to clarify some questions that came up, or at least provide some input. But I think the verification questions are great that you've raised, and also the approaches you shared. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would say the next step is to go to Discord. I've started a couple of threads already. If we're starting threads, I accidentally set one to private at one point, I think, and that was not good. So make sure that you're not setting a thread to private so everyone can see it. And then there are several things that can happen between now and Friday that will give people information. But I would just reiterate that in terms of coming to our decision, I don't think we're adding any new mechanisms at this point, or any new aspects of mechanisms. Rather, we're trying to clarify, and the clarifying questions that we've asked have been great. I don't understand all of the mechanisms yet, so I'm going to be working this week to understand them. And that's like, that would be the goal, I think, for the upcoming week, is that we actually feel comfortable with the mechanisms that have been proposed and we start playing with them. To give you a preview, next week we're going to become more adversarial. And instead of just exploring, we're going to actively try to attack. So that's why it's important that we focus on the mechanisms that are already in our list of possibilities, and also that we make sure we have some level of familiarity with the tools. So dumb questions are incredibly valuable, stupid questions, bad questions, whatever you want to call them. And just please ask lots of questions and don't think we need to speed run this. The goal is to maximize community understanding.
All right. Let's jump on verification. Again, we'll collect the information over Discord in the information hub. Fabi, I'm sure you were taking notes. Let's try to put together all information on the voting mechanisms or voting designs to be explored, and also share the slides. And yeah, again, I just have to check my calendar for running the office hour, and there might be more opportunities to spin up a call. Everybody is welcome to run collaboration sessions throughout the week, and then we'll meet again officially next Wednesday, same time, same place, right? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for today. See you on Discord.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks
See
a
you.
lot. Bye. Goodbye.
The recording has stopped.